You're listening to The Portfolio Composer, hosted by me, Dr. Garrett Hope, where business and creativity go hand in hand. Join us at theportfoliocomposer.com for news, talks, and workshops. This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the music notation software from Steinberg that's designed to save you time. Dorico 4, Steinberg's latest major version of music notation and composition software for Mac OS and Windows, is packed with powerful new features that are designed to accelerate your workflow and make it quicker and easier than ever to go from inspiration to finished product. If you're a composer, arranger, or orchestrator, you'll be delighted by the sophisticated new tools on offer. And there are improvements across the whole application, whatever your focus. For more information and to download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC. Hello, and welcome to episode 251 of the Portfolio Composer Podcast. I'm your host, your coach, and your teacher, Garrett Hope. This interview was recorded over 6 months ago when I was down in Tallahassee, Florida to do a live event for the Portfolio Composer about being a creative entrepreneur. And I knew I was going to the panhandle of Florida, and one of my favorite YouTube channels is this one by Driftwood Guitars. As I've spoken about before, you might have already heard me say it, but I have picked up the hobby of woodworking and specifically luthiery. And this was part of a pandemic hobby, trying to fill my time and to learn new skills, and I found it incredibly rewarding. Driftwood Guitars is run by Chris Alvarado, and lately he has brought on an assistant, Matt Miller, and they are producing some incredible content, and I just fell in love with it. So anyway, when I'm going to Florida, I reach out to them because I knew he was just a few hours away from where I was going to be. And I said, would you be willing to speak with me? And Chris was so generous that he invited me into his building studio, his wood shop. And we got to sit down and talk. Matt filmed the whole thing, and they're going to be releasing at least portions of this, I hope, on their channel as well. But this is the full interview. And because it was so long and so good, I've broken this into two parts. So this is the first part. Chris Alvarado, as you'll hear in his story, was a gigging and performing musician who was making a living and decided to pivot into building guitars. And who knows what he's going to do next. But this conversation is mind-blowingly good in his insights on how you diversify your income, how you use content creation to build an audience, how you get through your roadblocks, how you have to have a holistic response to what you're doing, and how you have to think about making your art as if you are a business, because you are. And if you don't recognize that, you're just a hobbyist. I also need to give a great big thank you to Tabitha at the Grayton Seafood Restaurant in Grayton Beach, Florida. Because after I visited Chris in his shop in Freeport, I drove straight down to the Emerald Coast with these incredible white sand beaches. And I was struggling to get internet, and the coffee shop that advertised it wasn't having it, and I had to deal with the printing of the workbook for the seminar I was giving the next day. And Tabitha so gracefully let me have access to the internet at her seafood restaurant. So Tabitha, thank you so much. You were a tremendous host. And next time I come back to Florida, I am definitely taking my friends to your restaurant. So thank you so much. And everyone, when you go to the Emerald Coast and you visit Grayton Beach, go to the Grayton Seafood Restaurant. All right, you guys are going to get a lot out of this interview. It's absolutely tremendous. Enjoy.
My name is Chris Alvarado, and I'm a luthier, which is a guitar builder in Freeport, Florida, which is, people are like, where's Freeport? It's in not real Florida. We're in the panhandle between Tallahassee and Pensacola is an easy way to get for people who don't know this area. Yeah, I've been building acoustic guitars. It's funny, mostly as a hobby and a little side hustle for about 15 years, and only about 4 months ago I quit playing music full-time as a full-time singer-songwriter solo act to do this full-time now. So now I'm just a full-time luthier and I guess the dreaded two-word content creator. We also run a YouTube channel called Driftwood Guitars, and that's a big part of the business here nowadays is the YouTube channel as well.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, that's why you're here.
Yeah. So before we get into that, though, I want to ask kind of my standard opening question. And I explained this to you on the phone, but I'm going to say it again.
Okay.
So the name of the podcast is The Portfolio Composer.
Yeah.
And the idea is that as creatives in the 21st century, we have to have a portfolio of income-producing activities.
Yeah.
Because I believe the idea of jobs has gone away.
Yep.
And there's lots of ways that we can serve an audience by helping them get what they want. And I think you're doing that from what I can see. So the question is, what's in your portfolio? You said that you were a singer-songwriter. Yeah. What else are you doing?
So when you called me and you gave me the elevator pitch on what the podcast was, I was like so excited because it's literally the thing that I tell people all the time. So many young musicians who are just getting started, trying to make a living as like a full-time working, gigging musician, asked me for advice because I had been kind of the old guy in town who's been doing it forever. And so my advice was almost always that. You got to diversify, you know? So let's back up. For me, I came from a family where my dad was a full-time musician, but also in the military. He did music on the weekends and did the military thing. And I kind of somehow ended up doing the same thing for a little while. After 9/11, I joined the military. Then I started playing music on the side, and that was my side hustle. You know, it was just like extra scratch playing music. And then I realized that I want to do it full time. And when I started playing music full time, suddenly I realized, especially where we live, that it's very seasonal. Especially back then, it was packed from like Labor Day to Memorial Day. And then you're going, how am I going to pay rent in November?
Right.
So I started to realize that I have to diversify my income stream, and I didn't want to sacrifice on what I set out to do, which was to make a living as a musician. And I think so many musicians think that the only way to make a living as a musician is to be making notes come out of their instrument.
Right.
And that's not the case at all. I think that so many people don't realize that they've developed skills, very specific skills, through their career, no matter how far they are into it, that can be monetized in one way or another. And so I had kind of been learning how to do some recording on the side. And so I quickly started to invest a little bit of money into some studio equipment and started recording myself. As the off season came along, we started reaching out to my friends. I'm like, hey, it's the off season. Do you want to record an album? And so I kind of started making a little bit of money doing that. And then the guitar business started to kind of take off a little bit. And that became another version of my income, was doing the guitar building. And then another segue of that was doing instrument repair. And then provide services for people doing the hired gun as a guitar player. Instead of me just being the main guy, I'm happy to just play a chord chart for you.
Right.
And my wife does my booking. So sometimes she would make some extra money doing booking for other people. You can, be a consultant for different venues that are interested in bringing in live music. But hey, can you help us figure out how to bring in live music? So I just would always be looking for that next thing that I can do to find a way to monetize the skills that I have. And I see so many musicians struggle because they just don't think outside the box, and they just go, I just need a gig. I'm like, bro, like you have all these other things you can do,
Yeah.
You have all, like my dad, for example, is a sax player. By the nature of his economic situation, he had to start doing his own pad replacements on his saxophone.
Yeah.
Well, like, cool, now you know how to repad a sax. So, like, we have a huge student band world here, so like start advertising that you can do repadding on saxophones, and like that's extra money, so that's kind of been my big thing for folks, is like, don't just rely on that one thing, figure out what parallel paths there are, because on top of the now there's the future, because one day we all start to get older and you can't do the thing that you have dedicated your life to as an instrumentalist, and just speaking from that perspective, and you physically won't be able to do it. But if you slowly develop other skills and other networks, you can ease out of that and start doing these other things. Like public speaking is something that I'm starting to do more with my guitar stuff. I just did a lecture for Florida State University for the program called OLLI that they do. It's for like adult.
Oh yeah, it's the adult learning.
Yeah. And I enjoy it so much. So it's like, it's just really fun, and it makes you better at your craft, because you're not like so laser focused on just like the thing. You're focused on all the things inside of its orbit, and it makes you just a better artist, I think.
And now you're doing content creation.
Yeah, and then the content. Jeez, yeah, exactly. And so because I had done recording stuff, audio recording stuff in the studio, it was like, well, video recording it's kind of the same. It's a different medium, but the post-production stuff is kind of similar in many ways. It became very quickly, easily, and we brought Matt in to work with me, and it was like suddenly I had like the ability to be myself in front of the camera. In 1 year, we grew the channel from like 1,000 subscribers to we're almost at 40,000 subscribers.
I'm one of them.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And that has turned into the craziest thing for us. I didn't ever think that I would say it, but YouTube is what has made my business a success. YouTube is the thing that allowed me to be able to quit playing music for a living and to just do this. You know, and that might not be everybody's goal, but it was for me. I've been doing music for 15 years and got burnt out, and then said this isn't sustainable. Like I don't want to do this. I want to play music. I don't want to have to play music.
Right.
And I think a lot of musicians can relate to that. We kind of stumbled into YouTube, and suddenly things started happening because of YouTube on a business level, and now it's like just as important to our business as making sawdust, you know, and it's just been crazy. It's led to many opportunities, but I wouldn't have gotten that, you know, I wouldn't have found that as an avenue for me had I not created that first video or the second video, third video, when I was talking to nobody, when I was just going, well, it's something that I'm interested in. Right. You know, and it was just another parallel path to what I was already doing. And so it's like you hear about that, the hierarchy of like happiness, and the top of the pyramid is self-actualization. And I've been saying it for a decade now, but like I literally get paid to be me. You know what I'm saying? Which I guess is what self-actualization is. It's a lot of people go their whole lives and don't even know what it is that they were put here for.
Sure.
And like I think what makes you an artist is that you're doing the thing that you feel like you were put here for. Most of us aren't lucky enough to do it and make a living doing it. And I've figured out some crazy, weird way of doing it, and it blows my mind every single day. You know, it's just nuts. But yeah.
Life is nuts.
I know.
But I actually want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago, because part of in your story you were saying people would come to you and be like, I don't know what to do, and you're saying think differently, think outside the box. And you come from the singer-songwriter kind of pop folk music world, right?
Yeah.
And I come from the conservatory trained classical music thing, and the mentality is the same.
Yeah.
It's I'm just going to do this one thing really, really well, and then there's this promise of all these things on the other side of it.
Yeah.
But they don't exist.
They don't.
Not anymore. So the question I want to ask is, why do you think there is that mental roadblock in thinking about opportunities?
I think part of it is that they're tainted from the beginning because they're told.
Yes.
Not only by the people who are teaching them, but by society, that making a living as an artist is binary. You're either successful, and I'm using quote marks, or you're not. And successful means, to the layman, that I've heard of you, or you've done something that I've heard of. That's successful. And if you decide to make your living as an artist, that if you're not wholly, singularly laser focused on that thing that is a societal expectation of success, then you're not dedicated enough to it. Like, oh, I don't want to take away time from practicing to learn about this other parallel thing to my craft, because I should be spending that time getting better at my craft so that I can be successful. So I think that that's a big barrier for most folks, and they just don't want to sacrifice that any more energy from practicing or becoming better at their craft, when they don't realize that like it's the holistic approach that's going to make you a better artist. I mean, it even goes to like the old saying of those that can't teach. Like that is just a small example of the way the society looks at it, right?
Absolutely.
But the reality of it is anybody who's ever taught knows that if you really want to learn a subject,
you have to teach it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know how much I didn't know until I started trying to learn how to teach. And then you're like, I mean, the first day I had an apprentice in here, it was like, oh my God, why do you do that, Mr. Alvarado? I don't have a clue. I better figure out the why, right? You know, I know that wasn't the most clear answer to that question, but I feel like that has to be a part of it. So, and my dad and I have had this conversation many times. I know I brought him up a few times, but like he's 62 now, physically at a point where he can't really do it for a living anymore, but always has these regrets because he says, I never did anything else besides just try to be impressive. It was always easy to be impressive to the layman and then just rest on that and be like, yeah, I'm successful in the moment, but not pulling your head above the water and realizing like, okay, but this isn't going to be forever. Mm-hmm. Even if you do it forever, one day your body's not going to allow you to, and then suddenly you wakes up and you're 62 and you're going, well, I don't have any other skills. And I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to do, the only thing that makes me happy is playing music. Well, there's a million things that would make him happy that are parallel to making the actual music that he has skills for, but didn't take the time to develop them into businesses like renting out his equipment or providing lighting and sound reinforcement for events or officiating weddings or, recording
basic
people,
instrument repair
preparing saxophones.
Yeah.
There's just, I could probably, if I sat down and spent 10 minutes, come up with 10 pretty easy to monetize things that he could do with the skill sets that he has. And that's just a small example of one person in one small town. And it's going to depend on the person and what town they live in, whether it's a city or the middle of Nebraska. But there's always something there.
Always.
Really is. There's literally always something there.
So here's how I say it to my students. That this circle, it's a Venn diagram.
Yeah.
This is your talent stack. It's all the things you know,
Yep.
your skills, and your experience. And then over here is this group of people we're going to call your audience, the people you want to serve. And I'm all about thinking about service, not selling.
Yeah.
And where they meet, there's an infinite number of ways that this can help them get what they want.
Yeah.
And when you think that way, you can begin to look around the world and you say, oh my gosh, well, I know how to do that. I can help you.
Yeah.
Or you want to be able to do that? Well, let me show you how.
Yep. It's true. And it's like, and it's funny on the front end of it when it comes to like the daunting task of developing a skill that you can monetize. A lot of times if you flip the script and realize that like, let's take it to my world example of now I'm a guitar builder. Well, that started off with I wanted to buy a guitar that I couldn't afford. And so I'll learn how to build. And like sometimes the cost of learning the skill can seem high, but the reality of it is it's the old teach a man to fish thing. Once you learn the skill, A, you don't have to pay for that service anymore, and B, you can monetize it by being the service provider of whatever that thing is.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was in the military, it was that epiphany moment for me when like we wanted to do some remodeling on the house, and we got a quote to put hardwood floors in. And I guess this is interesting because like nobody would ever question this in a non-artist world, but let's take it to the physical world. So I needed the hardwood floors put in the house. I get a quote, and it's like, okay, it's gonna be $15,000 to get the whole house done with hardwood flooring and everything. And I'm like, okay, well, how much does the floors cost? Like, what's the materials cost? Well, the materials cost is $5,000. So that means I can make $10,000 worth of mistakes and still break even. That's the way my brain instantly went to. I can invest in tools and still, so say I spend $3,000 in tools, I still got $7,000 worth of mess ups that I can make and still be at the same cost at what it was for the original quote. And on top of it, when I'm done, I now know how to install hardwood flooring. So if I need to, I could install somebody else's flooring for cheap, or now I have the tools that I essentially almost got for free because it saved me money by not hiring somebody, and I can do other things at a cheaper price because now I own the skill saw and all the things.
Exactly.
And I think that I kind of snowballed that in with my art too. And I find it funny because people think that way all the time when it comes to like just general life, consuming.
Absolutely.
But they don't think of it as an artist. But you said something off the air about realizing that you're a business owner, and I think that's the key.
Yes.
That's absolutely the key. And I think that that's something that I tell folks all the time in my world as a solo artist. I'm like, oh, but like, you're a sole proprietor. You own a business of one. You're a corporation of one. And think of it that way. Why in the world would you not think of it that way? Because if you installed faucets or did taxes for people, you wouldn't think of it any other way. But because you make art, you for some reason put it inside some other bucket where you're like more loose with your way of thinking, and it's always about like just looking for the next gig.
I think there's multiple reasons why that is. But I think a big part of it is this 19th century idea that the real artist struggles.
Yep.
They're supposed to be poor and living in this attic apartment and on the brink of suicide and depression all the time and addicted to drugs. And but no.
No. Yeah, we're told as a society that you're successful when you're famous, but the reality is most famous people are miserable.
Yes.
And most people who are struggling artists are miserable. But there's this huge, giant section in the middle of people who are making good livings, creating their art that nobody acknowledges because they're not miserable. Like as around where we live, there's all these celebrities and famous people, and we live within 8 hours of Nashville, and everybody come to my shows and be like, what are you doing here? Why aren't you in Nashville? Like, you're at my show right now and you're enjoying it, are you not? Yes, okay. You vacation here, do you not? I live here. And like, just because I'm more successful than most people I know on a financial level, I'm more successful, even if you don't count the guitars at all, than most artists that are going out there trying to quote unquote make it. Even people on labels, record labels, and they're being toured all over the country to where their label sends them to. I make way better money than they do because you got to put your pride aside and realize, I think that you got to make a decision. Do you want to try to make it, whatever the heck that means? Or do you just want to make a living? And if you just want to make a living, then suddenly the whole world opens up to you. And it's amazing how many things will start to fall in your lap. It's when you stop chasing it that things can start to happen for you. I feel like I'm all over the place on this, but I just kind of the stream of conscious. Matt knows all about this.
I love it. I love these kinds of conversations.
So one of my things that I told somebody, because I had an opportunity years ago, actually it was with Matt, and we were in this thing for the Grammys, Florida Grammy Association, which the Recording Academy has like 12 chapters around the country, and they had one called the Florida Grammy Showcase, and we ended up winning it. There was an opportunity with some record labels, and I quickly realized I don't want anything to do with this because it was just so you become a product. But for those that are out there chasing carrots, as I always call it, let's use an analogy of a train. The music industry is this. It's a train, and everybody's chasing after it as fast as they can, just trying to get on it. And there's the people who are on board who, from the outside, look like they got their act together. And they're watching all these schmucks chase after this train trying to hop on, and the train conductor's going, ha, ha, ha. You know what gets the train conductor's attention? The one guy who's really good, and he's like, I don't give a shit about the train.
That's right.
He's going to slow down and go, well, like, why doesn't that guy care? Mm-hmm. Like, what has he got that's so cool that, like, he didn't even care about what I'm doing? You know what I mean? Like, and I told myself for a long time that I didn't want fame before I actually felt it. I had to, like, actually say it out loud for months and months and months and months before I truly was at a point where, like, opportunities would come my way where I was like, oh yeah, I really don't care about that anymore, you know.
It's like
and
having to dress for success. You have to act like that behavior before it.
Yeah, and then the moment that I started to really not care about it and just go, how do I make my business a success as a musician? How do I figure out how to make as much money as I can while still having a sense of, like, home life and be home as much as I want? How can I make the most money for the least amount of gigs? And the gigs that I do play are gigs that I want to play.
Right.
If I could, and then I started to treat it that way, and everything else was just like, who gives a crap? I don't care if insert whatever famous person's at the show, because Matt knows this. I mean, half the shows we play around here is going to be somebody who's a big deal at your gig. Who cares?
They're not going to do anything for you anyway.
Yeah. Why would somebody who's successful in that business want to bring in more competition into their field? A, famous people have no control over who comes in and out of the industry. But B, why would they want to? Famous singer-songwriter goes, man, you're better than me. You should come be competition to my product. Like, why would that even be a thing? But more importantly, the fact that you can make a good living doing what you love is more than most people will ever be able to dream of, but we're told over and over again that it's not enough unless you're a big deal.
Yes.
And, like, bro, you get to play music for a living.
This episode is sponsored by Dorico, the future of scoring. And we want to feature real Dorico users so you can know that real composers out in the world today are using Dorico to make their careers happen.
My name is Joseph Soa, and I'm a professional composer and founder of the Wizarding School for Composers, where I teach other composers and musicians to write powerful music with ease. Dorico saves me so much time. I often joke that one of the other programs in particular is a kind of copyist job employment security, just because of how much time it takes to make parts and to fiddle with little details that all you have to do in Dorico is check a checkbox. The biggest thing I like about Dorico is how much you can do from the keyboard. As a result of that, Dorico enables you to put in music and edit music so quickly. I love the fact that I can select multiple staves and input notes into multiple staves all at one time. That's a ton of fun and saves me time. I think the big thing about version 4 that gets me really excited is all the workflow improvements. Taking the processes of me putting the music and me editing the music and making it even faster and even more flexible. One of the things I'm particularly excited about the new version is the note transformation tools, just the ability to rotate and invert and rearrange different musical materials is just making Dorico into the most powerful, not just notation software, but composing software. I think that's, to my mind, what stands out head and shoulders above the other programs is just the flexibility and the naturalness that Dorico enables you to compose and not just notate your music. I would 100% recommend Dorico to anyone. Dorico is the fastest and most powerful scoring program on the market right now. Another thing that I absolutely love about Dorico and the whole team that they have is just they're so easy to get a hold of, and they give such great support, not only in the official documentation and videos, but also through social media channels. So it's just a fantastic community, and that support makes learning the program much easier than it would have been.
To download a free 30-day trial of Dorico 4, visit www.steinberg.net/TPC.
My dad's the one who actually really made me realize I was going to go to school to go to Berklee when I got out of the military. I want to go to Berklee School of Music because in my mind I was going to be this monster guitar player. Like, I wanted to do jazz studies, because everybody knows that's really hireable. But I'd be really good at guitar.
Right? You want to be a good jazz cat.
That's right. So I wanted to go to Berklee, and I remember my dad, he kind of just let me... I was taking lessons from a Berklee grad who was like, teach me the test, basically.
Right.
Teach me everything I need to know, so when I go up there, I get in. And I remember my dad just kind of really nonchalantly be like, so, like, why do you want to go to Berklee? Like, I think it's great, but tell me, what is your end game? And I'm like, well, I just want to play music. He's like, but no bar owner's going to hire you because you went to Berklee. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to give you a gig because you went to Berklee.
That's right.
They are going to book you because you're good at what you do. And he's like, and in my experience, most of these cats that went to Berklee on guitar are really stiff, like, because they haven't cut their teeth on this, gigging. Like, Matt's been gigging since he was like a fetus, and like he has more just street knowledge of music than the vast majority of musicians. Whereas the book knowledge musician who's just looking to gig, it doesn't translate a lot of times. And it just kind of occurred to me, like, yeah, like I want to go to Berklee because I want to be a monster guitar player, because I want to be impressive to other guitar players. If I really dug down and did some self kind of evaluation, that's why I really wanted to go to Berklee. Not because I wanted to be a good guitar player, because I wanted other guitar players to hear me and go, wow, that guy's really good. And he was like, listen, if you just want to make a living playing music, like, you're in a honey hole. Like, don't do that and do this. And I really did kind of take it to heart. I started getting some gigs and they paid well, and I realized, like, no, I just want to make a living. And I've said it a couple of times now, but yeah, if you can get to that point with your art that you can figure out a way to make a living with it, everything changes, and it turns into not just monetizing the specific thing, but all the other things we've talked about, the parallel paths that exist. And talking to other like-minded people who are, because it's not always the case. It's hard to find that nice combination of artist who also has that type A personality, because God knows artists, they're the worst.
Sometimes.
Yes, sleeping in late, only driven by like the beautiful things in life, and that's fine. And if you can find happiness just getting by, and just playing where you want, or painting what you want, or sculpting what you want, that's great.
Yeah, but I want more than just getting by.
Yeah, because I want to be able to say I completely and utterly make my living as an artist.
Yes.
I don't care what form it comes in, as long as the whatever art I'm creating makes me happy. And for me right now, my art is building guitars and making YouTube videos, and there's art in that.
Well, you've also broadened your definition of what it means to be an artist, right?
Yeah.
Because you're thinking in this way.
Yeah.
You're thinking, what can I do? How can I do something with it?
Yeah, and you said something earlier that, like, I struggle with, and it's very true for most people. I struggle with, am I selling out?
Mm-hmm.
You know? I don't even know what that means, but it's something. Matt and I are talking about a new technique that I might be using for doing some of my inlay work. And it's like, okay, but where is the line when it becomes losing the art to just manufacturing a product? So it's not like it's black and white. I have to find ways that I can continue to grow this company, but still keep the core of it, which is guy builds guitar that means something. That's what my goal is. The guitar has to mean something and be important and sound good and play good and look good. But how do I do that and scale it up to without losing that? And you just got to figure it out. You got to find where that edge is for you. I don't even know what the hell selling out means, but it's funny. It's people you become successful, and people suddenly think that because you're not struggling anymore that you don't get it. Everybody wants to be successful, but the person who is successful, like, oh, it's almost like a justification for their own, like, not happiness.
Yes, it is.
You know?
And I think a lot of that comes with these weird thoughts around money.
Mm-hmm.
And you've circled around it a little bit, like, I just want to make a living. I don't want to necessarily, like, Ebenezer Scrooge diving into it.
Yeah, but who doesn't want to kill it?
Right?
I mean, come on.
Well, we all want to put gas in our cars, which is getting harder to do.
Yeah.
Food in the fridge and a roof over our house, and I want to be able to help my kid be able to do what she wants to do. And
yeah. Here's something that I stumbled upon a couple of years ago. My brother is the quintessential, filled every bubble in of the white picket fence story. He graduated valedictorian high school, graduated top 1% with his undergrad at Florida State, and got his master's from Cornell. Works for a Fortune 100 company and is on the track to go to the top, making high six-figure salary. But will say out loud to me, like, not particularly satisfied in life, not particularly happy in life. Has more money than I'll probably ever have in my life, but it's just money. Doesn't know what his interests and hobbies are. If he had to quit work today, couldn't tell you what he would do with his free time, and tells me that we have this conversation all the time. And what I realized that there's several ways to success, but what was really interesting to me was this, and this goes to anybody who wants to be an artist, is society will tell you that, like, oh, you got to have a plan B, right? You got to have a plan B. You can always fall back on another thing. But what we've realized is that as successful as my brother is, because I constantly was figuring out what I need to do to pay my bills outside of play music, I had all these other parallel little passive streams of income, is that he is way less financially secure than even I am, because I can never be fired.
No, you can't.
If my brother gets fired tomorrow, all he knows how to do is update his resume and submit it. He doesn't have the skill to pay a bill on his own. I have developed this instinct and ability to just be flexible. No matter what happens with the economy, no matter what happens with socioeconomic issues around the world, I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
I have developed the ability to go identify a need, to figure out how to monetize the need, and then to flip the switch. And most people are taught to go to college and learn a job, but you're really hanging your neck out there. If you really think about it, you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And what we're trying to preach here is the literal opposite, is the gig economy, is figure out what skills you can do, and you can never be fired. You might stare into that precipice of your calendar and go, oh my God, I don't know where my money's going to come in for the next month.
Happens all the time.
But you also, that's an amazing defensive mechanism that you can have if you can learn to look at that abyss and go, I'll figure it out. I have to figure it out. I tell people all the time, put yourself in a situation where you have to succeed, because you'll figure it out. I promise you. If you've got a plan B, you'll just go to the plan B. You're just going to go do the other thing. But if you just go, I believe in myself, and I know that I can figure this out, and I have to now. You will. And I the best thing that ever happened to me when I got out of the military is I was so broke that my power got cut off. And that was the most empowering thing ever, because when my power got cut off, I went, I'll get it turned back on, but it's just my power, but before that, in the military, it was like, I can't even imagine what that must be like. You must be destitute. And I mean, it never happened again after that point, but it was actually a liberating moment for me, because it empowered me to go, like, I can push it that far if I need to. I can get to the point where it seems like the wheels are falling off before I have to make, like, the most rash decision ever, which would be, like, go work at Home Depot or something, But I now trust myself. I believe in myself, and so does the people who are around me. My wife trusts me if I say, I think we can make this work. And you got to surround yourself with people like that too.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now that you do have a family, did that precipice move? Because the urgent need to have to provide is in a new place.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, I talk a big game here, but the reality of it is when I leaped and got out of the military to play music and build guitars for a living, I had just gone through a divorce, and that certainly makes it a lot easier to make that decision. Like, I don't know that if we had kids and we were staying married, that would have been the same decision I made. It's a part of the big reason why my father has never did anything else either, because we had 2 kids and a wife, and like we've had that conversation before too. It's like, you just don't do that. You can't roll that much dice, because suddenly the dice aren't just yours; they're other people's too. Part of it is that now that I have stopped playing music for a living and I'm doing just this, that was really the first time that I've done that sort of leap since I've had a wife and a child, a special needs kid too, on top of that, who requires a lot of extra attention and all this stuff. It is a lot of extra pressure, but it's just, once again, it's that much more of a motivator for me. Sure. I want to be successful for myself, but I want to show them, even if they don't care, because my son especially, he doesn't care, he doesn't know the difference. But I want to be able to show them that I got you, I got your back. No matter what happens, we're going to be okay. And that's a huge driving force for me, is showing them that, you can be successful carving out your own unique individual path. I mean, I make a living as a YouTube guy, and I build guitars in a 2-car garage. I make a good living doing it. Yeah. What? Are you kidding me? It's just weird, but I've figured it out. I figured out how to make it work. And I'm still figuring out how to make it work every day.
Yeah, well, we are. I agree. But the mentality is there. You can figure it out.
Yeah, and that's a skill that you have to develop. You don't just decide. You say it out loud before you really believe it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Say it. Believe in yourself. Try it, and be deathly afraid that you're not going to actually be successful. But once it starts to work, then you start to go, okay, yeah, I can trust myself. And then one day you find yourself in a wholly different mental space where you just go, okay, what do I want to do now? I tell people all the time, I might not build guitars in 10 years. Because people were really shocked when I said I wasn't going to play music anymore. What do you mean? I'm I never said I was going to play music forever, for a living. I still play music, but it's just when I want to now. And you know what? I might not do this in 10 years. I might want to do something else. I just want to do things that interest me.
Yeah.
And you can do the things that interest you for a living if you just figure out how to do it. Because you're interested in it, you know stuff about it, and therefore you know stuff about it, there's things you can monetize. And especially for people in your world, you've been playing your instruments since you were kids, And so holy cow, there's so many things you can do if you can get past what your friends and your family and society is telling you that you should do. And your own self, what you've been telling yourself since you were a child, what success looked like.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of that comes from what we see our parents modeled. Yeah. And you were talking about your dad. My dad's a little bit similar in that he was a career engineer, but his training and licensing was in architecture.
Okay.
But he got hired in this firm real young, and he was crazy good at it.
Yeah.
And some of his classmates went on to actually go and get their engineering license. He's a structural engineer.
I know the type.
Yeah, there's one over there.
That's mad.
And my dad's brilliant.
Or mechanical, sorry.
And for a while, he was the only person, actually after 2008, for a long time, the only person bringing new work into his firm.
Yeah.
But because he didn't follow the path of some of his friends to get their own license so he could hang his own shingle, he was always an employee.
Always an employee.
And made maybe 30% of what he could have made. Mm-hmm. And he still, I mean, I had a great upper middle class living, like for an engineer dad. But there was that fear around the risk or the perceived risk of having to go and do something where he didn't know, there was no guarantee on the other side that he'd be able to provide for me and my siblings.
We live, and this is more outside of the art, but like socioeconomically as a human society on the planet, we are, and COVID only expedited that, but we are at the end of the post-World War II era of getting a job and working your whole life and getting the gold watch. I mean, that's been hashed 1,000 times, right?
Yeah, it's done.
But still somehow teaching that as the way that you're supposed to do things, right? I mean, you watch golf or any like highbrow sport on TV, and every commercial is from Charles Schwab and, you know, all the big firms trying to get you to give them your money so that they can invest it for you and prop up, you know, basically make money, and so you can retire one day. But the reality of it is, if you can figure out how to do what you love for a living, you never want to retire. Because my aunt asked me right when I first got out of the military, she said, "Well, what are you going to do when you retire?" I was like, I just flipped it on its head. I said, "Well, what are you going to do when you retire?" She said, "Whatever the hell I want." I'm like, well, I already do that now, so.
And I get paid for it.
So what do you, like, retirement, you have to fundamentally rethink everything.
Yeah.
I don't believe in retirement. One day, I'll just do something else. One day I'll be so old that I won't have to do, hopefully I can get my money squared away enough that I won't have to do anything. But the reality of it is, you ever notice that people who are really successful at what they do don't ever retire because they love what they do?
Yes.
So retirement's this thing that was made up because you hate your job. And that one day you can do, I have a lyric in one of my songs that like, one day your hair will be gray for the good life, because that's what we're taught, right? You're supposed to just like work really hard, shut up and color, figure out how to find happiness in the doldrums of every single day life. And one day you'll be able to cash out, and then you can flip off a bird to your boss and live your happy life. But like, you wasted all those years, you could have been happy the whole time, you know? Like I tell my brother too, him and I we're only 18 months apart. But if I died today and he died when he's 80, I will still have already spent more years of my life living than he ever will. Because every day I do what I want to do. You know, every single day I do what I want to do. And because it's what I want to do, I put the correct amount of energy into it. And Matt always has this thing he says all the time about, if you put energy into the system's going to give it back. No matter what.
He's so Newtonian.
I know. Yeah. He's standing near us. That's the only way we keep bringing him up. But no, it's true, because like sometimes, and this isn't to gloss over the crappy days that when you're doing the things that we're talking about.
It can be hard.
It still becomes a job, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes I'm not in the mood to do it. I'm not in the mood to put energy into the system. But we always manage to just put, even if it's a tenth of the energy that I put in the day before, it's still something. I've moved the ball down the field. And most people who have a job that they hate spend every single day, especially on the weekends, going, I'm going to do that thing tomorrow. I'm going to pursue that passion tomorrow. So every single day, even on my crappiest days, I'm still putting more energy into my system than most people do in their whole lives. And it's like, I have a hard time relating because it's been so long, but I literally quit working for somebody else when I was 26, when I got out of the military. And the moment that I stopped doing that and I suddenly started working for myself successfully, it was like somebody had given me the cheat code to life, and I don't understand how everybody else doesn't see it. I feel like there's like this fourth dimension that I broke into where I suddenly see everything so clearly about where happiness lies. And I see people walking around every day, and I just want to like grab them and be like, it's right in front of you. Like, don't you see it? And I don't know why people don't see how simple it is. And I fundamentally believe that if most people would figure out how to do it, that everything would be so much better. I know that people gotta like run the cash register at the grocery store and things like that. Nobody loves picking the trash out. But for the most part, you can find ways to make a good living doing what makes you happy. And God knows it's really hard for me to be in a bad mood on a daily basis. It makes me a better father. It makes me a better husband. It makes me a better friend. It makes me a better contributor to my community. Yeah, you know, it's just, and on top of it all, I get to make a good living doing it. And that's just the extra. That's what's crazy about it. In the end, everything that we've talked about here, I would do it all for free. I would do all this crap for free, and I somehow still get paid to do it. And that's what blows my mind. And I think that if you can figure out what is the thing that you would do, what is the thing that you want to do when you get off work at your job that you hate? What is that? Do that.
This episode of The Portfolio Composer was brought to you by Dorico 4, the most advanced music notation software ever created. Dorico was designed to save you time and gives you the tools you need to produce beautiful and readable scores fast, so you can spend less time fiddling with menus and rules and more time doing what you love, making music. Now you can take Steinberg's music notation and composition software with you wherever you go with Dorico for iPad. Whether you're a composer, arranger, instrumentalist, teacher, or student, Dorico is the ideal app for producing beautiful sheet music that you can share as a PDF or music XML, or print directly to your AirPrint-enabled printer. Dorico for iPad is available now in the App Store. Learn more at www.dorico.com/iPad. You can also try the full version of Dorico out for 30 days for free by downloading the trial version at www.steinberg.net/TPC. Try it today.